Welcome back to Davin's Random. Today I'm going to show you guys how to do a mini split non-destructive install on a rental. So basically I'm renting this house, I'm leasing it out, and I want to install a mini split, but I'm not allowed to drill through these walls or block. So couldn't drill through them anyway. I mean, it would take a lot of work, and honestly I'd probably have to go up through the ceiling and over the edge, and yeah, no. So I figured out a way to do it non-destructively and a way that I can take it with me when I'm done. So today I'm installing a 1-ton, 110 volt Pioneer system. So there's a little work that has to be done to make this happen. But I'm thinking what I'm going to do is the main area is okay. It's the bedroom. And during the summer, especially here in Phoenix, it gets so hot that it's really hard to keep the bedroom cool. So I need cool to sleep. So let's go back to the bedroom here and let me show you what's going on there. I have this one window, so I think I'm going to set it up so I can do it through this window. So we're going to open this thing up and see what it looks like. But let's go outside and see what we're up against. This isn't going to be fun. So this is Bougainvillea. And yeah, not looking forward to this. So anyway, there's the bedroom window. I'm going to set this up so I can install through it using wood panels. And basically, I'll be blocking the opening of that window. And, you know, the circuit breaker box is right next to it. So I have two options. With 110, you can either run a line and have a plug-in, or you can wire it directly into the box. I don't know. Right now, I got to get rid of this bush. This is Bougainvillea. This stuff is filled with thorns. I hate this stuff, but luckily, there's two bushes here, and my landlord doesn't know that there's two, so I'm going to remove one and then trim the other one back. So I guess I got to do that first. So for this, I'm going to be using my Ryobi Sawzall, and you can get these wood blades that are meant for cutting branches pretty much at any hardware store. And I'll just open that up and lock that in, and then we're good to go. So safety first, right? Let's get started. All right, now I got access. I had to clear out a little bit more, but now I can get back here without being stuck to death, because look at the thorns on these things. Ugh, nasty stuff. I hate this. It's like, ugh. If you ever want to secure a window, just plant Bougainvillea. I have some plywood over here that I've already pre-cut, and these are going to go one on the inside, one on the outside. I'm going to make a frame for it and paint them. Okay, so the plan is to leave this window in because we've got a really good seal right here, and I think, spider. Now we've got a 4-pane window. Be pretty energy efficient, but what I'm going to do is put a wood panel out here and one in here. We'll screw them together, paint them, make them look pretty, and make them secure so nobody can break in. It's always a good thing. So with the wood propped up in the window, I got to go inside and mark it. I'm going to have to get some wood set inside this. Probably going to be 2x4s, and it's going to have to be pretty thick, and it has to clear this lip. So I got to make sure when I draw my line that clears that. And it looks like it clears it there. Let's go ahead and mark where the bottom is. And then on this side, same thing. You can see how warped this thing is. Pretty freaking warped. So I'm going to go ahead and use some Tybond 2 wood glue, and we're going to glue this and screw it down. And then that should take the warping out of the plywood. Well, 3 pieces of warped wood can make 1 piece of unwarped wood. So I've got it propped up in there, so let's go inside and look at it. It looks like it's a pretty tight fit. as you can see, it looks like the 2x4 does stick out just a little bit past the edge, but that's okay because I'm going to run weather stripping around the outside of this, and that's going to push it out another 1/4 of an inch. And then on the inside, I'll run some weather stripping on the panel that goes on the inside part. So it should be good. So I found some weather stripping in just my old materials. This is for like a truck top and just some cheap weather sealing. You can get this at Home Depot or anywhere. It does not stick well to wood, so in order to make this stick, I'm using some Elmer's multi-purpose adhesive, and this will help it. So just a quick shot of this. Discovered 3 coats is pretty good. And you just let that tack up, and then that will go on there. And then this panel is pretty much done and ready to go on now that it's painted. So fancy. The foam is on. And if you pop this off. So right here it says bubble level. This is center, just so you know. Right here where it says bubble level. That's where this thing is going to be centered. Now on these units, you have your lines, which are right here, and they can go a few different ways. So they can hang out through here, or they can come across and hang out this side. Doesn't really matter. You have cutouts right here for both. So we need to look at this and figure out where we're going to mount it. So take this inside and have a look. So our window is going to be, our opening is going to be right here. Our hole for our line is going to be either here or here, somewhere in that space range. This will be offset because I want it closer to the center of the room, and it'll also be up here. I'm not actually moving this. I'm building a bracket off of the wall that will stick out. And then there'll be a piece of plywood, and this will mount to the plywood. Not exactly sure. I'm kind of winging it, but you get the drift. Now the head unit weighs about 10 pounds, so it's not super heavy. Old piece of scrap wood should be fine. If anything, this thing's going to be a little overbuilt, but there we go. Just a simple bracket setup. It'll mount on the wall just like that. So complicated. So I marked off where the bottom of the blinds are because I'm not taking those down. They're going to stay there. I'm just removing the cover on the top. But anyway, the bottom of the blinds hits here, so this has to slide up underneath it. So I think that'll be okay. Alright, so looking at this, I got the panel just latched back on here so I can see where this needs to be. Now if I slide this over to where it's perfectly center on here, the main thing you have to think about is the drain line, the angle of the drain line, because it has to pitch down. So from the bottom of the unit to the center of the drain line, from there is 2.5 inches. So 2.5 inches, and then the bottom right here, which is also the bottom of this bracket, is where I need to mark my hole to be. And I got to drill 2.5 inch hole. They say 3. I think that's overkill. Everything fits actually in a smaller hole. Okay, so I've got some temporary screws holding this in place. It has to be leveled out before I install the head on it. Not a big deal, but should be pretty close. Everything's eyeballed, so I think it's good. Obviously I measured for this hole. I am very happy with that. So you can see it's going to be offset from the window. There's no getting around that. You know, I could flip it to the other side, but really I need it to be in the middle of the room. One thing that I noticed with these is in a couple of installs I did them over like in this corner, and it kind of blows, just the way these heads are designed, it kind of blows straight down, kind of at an angle this way, just a slight bit. So if it's too far over this way, it only cools this part of the room. Here I think it's going to be perfect because it's about dead center with the entire room. If I step back here, you can kind of see. Now my only concern here is this window is set in a little bit. So just to make sure that there's equal pressure on everything, I'm going to go ahead and put some more weather stripping on here. That way it'll be fully protected. Because the last thing I want to do is put pressure on the windows. My little hole outside, so perfectly lined up. Now, when you're going through the wall, it's okay to have a little bit of an angle from this side going out if the outside hole is just a hair lower because you want that gravity feed. But the distance to this is so short that it's not going to matter. It'll bleed out just fine. We are now ready to actually install the mini split. So yeah, this worked out really well. I was really surprised. But anyway, that is stout. I mean, really stout. It looks weird because, you know, we've got this thing hanging over the wall here, but these heads don't cause any vibration at all, and they're fairly lightweight, so I don't see there being any issues. But you can see we got good clearance everywhere around this thing. So I am very happy with how this turned out. A few degrees off, so I'm going to go ahead and screw this down. And usually what I do is I come in and hit screws on here, here, 2 up here, 2 over here. It doesn't need a whole lot. So typically when you hang this, you put 1 screw here and then you level it out and then you add your top screws. Then you go to these screws and then you go to these screws. So all screwed down, ready to mount. I got it. I'm pretty sure.
My dad has something like.
Oh, I got it actually. So it has to be scooted over. So you need just a little more slack. And then it clamps on like that. So you get this nylon wrap. This stuff is completely useless. I hate that stuff. It's garbage. And then you get an actual cutout for the hole if you choose to use it, which I didn't because I went to a smaller hole size. But this sits in here, you can see it's a huge gap. Not exactly ideal. So we won't worry about that. But these are the cooling lines, and then you get a drain line, and then you get a tube that attaches to this if you want to slide this all the way through the wall, which we don't need again. And then you get your signal wires and plasticine. So plasticine is like clay that never really hardens. This you shove inside this tube to close all the air gaps. We're not needing this, so that can stay to the side. We're just going to seal it off with a little bit of weatherproof white duct tape. But these are the signal lines. So we are going to go ahead and install these and get these hooked up. So these signal lines go from the head unit to this unit. We have to open this thing up from here. It just pops open. You can take this whole thing out while leaving that up. It's 1, 2, 3 and ground. So just make sure the color combination is the exact same on the other side. Okay, so we're going to take these lines to the stick. We'll taper this up and then we'll slide this through. So that's going to go to the outside and then I'll be able to get that through fairly easily. Okay, so we got that fed through. Just so you know, when you order these, you can choose the length of how long you want your cable to be. So my cable and my lines for this are 10 feet. 16 feet is standard. The AC compressor side of it comes filled with enough R410A for 16 feet of line. So it's actually slightly overfilled for 10 feet. So once you get to this point, you're going to undo these screws. That will clamp the cable down. And get this pulled out more. This is very hard to do one-handed. Anyway, you get it from this point. So let me go ahead and connect these. Okay, correct orientation is red, black, white, green. So 1, 2, 3, ground. That's all we got to remember, red, black, white, green for the other side. Before hooking up these lines, you should really inspect how well these copper flares were done inside here to make sure that there's nothing in the way. So let me angle this up here. So if I were to install this as is, I would have some problems, because you see that piece of copper or brass right there from the flare? That would definitely cause a major leak. So I got to get that out of there. Do some quick surgery with some needle nose. Look at that. That would definitely cause some major problems. So anyway, these flares, you really have to look at them. So get them pushed out. Make sure it looks like that they have a good clean edge all the way around. If they don't, then you have to trim them off and re-flare them again. These look fine. So now that I got that chunk of brass out of there, it should be good. Okay, so flare wise, I think we're good. So I don't have to re-flare these lines. So that's good. So we'll go ahead and put the covers back on just for a minute. Just try to keep as much dust and dirt out of here as you possibly can, so it ensures a good seal. Alright. And there, it's probably weighs somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 pounds. It's not too bad, but it's definitely enough that you'll feel it, but I think I can lift it over to where I need to go. So, as long as I can get the foam off of it, yeah. So I think this is where the final resting place is going to be. It has to be shimmed up, but this ground slopes away, so it'll just pull up right here. Very close to that. And just so you know, regulation, as far as I know, for local code anyway, is it has to be 3 feet away from the power. So when they mean power, they mean circuit breaker box. Obviously it's going to have its own power lines tied in, but I believe that distance will be fine. The wrenches needed to install this are 11/16, 7/8, and 9/16. And then you should also get this, this showed up in the billing package. This is nylock, otherwise known as flare connection refrigerant leak guard. And basically it's almost like a glue that you put on the flared ends. That way when it tightens down, it makes sure that there's a good seal no matter what. And just so you know, you can pull these apart. That way you can adjust the length of what it's going to be. It'll be pretty obvious. Big one goes to the big one, little one goes to the little one. And be careful when you're unrolling these copper tubing so you don't kink it or bend it, because if you do, you're going to have some problems. Light bends where it doesn't kink are fine, but anything more than that is too much. So this line is charged with nitrogen to keep it clean on the inside, so when you open this, it's going to make a little off-gas sound. Don't worry about it. Ain't no thing. And then you just got to swirl this nylock all over it. Make sure that's fully coated all the way around. And I save these caps. That way when I want to remove this later on, once I'm done with this place, you can back the system up and save all the freon in the compressor by closing down the high side and then running it and then closing down the low side 30 seconds later. That'll push all of the freon back to the compressor, and then you can undo your lines and safely move it, and probably not have to add very much once it's moved. What I like to do is be able to see the copper and then stick it on there so you know it's flush, and then roll the cap on. And that will let you know that it's fully secure. So from here I can go in and tighten it. So on the big connection, one side is 11/16. That would be this side, and this side is 7/8. So it's going to be 7/8 or 11/16 on the big side and 9/16 on the small side. Get that on there. I think what I'm going to do is there's an outlet right behind this. So I've got this extension cord. This one's rated for 20 amps. I'm just going to go ahead and wire this in right here, and we're going to just plug it directly in. So I think that'll be the easiest thing to do. Normally I wouldn't recommend setting this up this way, but it only uses 11 amps. So I know that this is going to be fine for it. This is a 20 amp extension cord. Our connection wires now go here. So we're going to have to feed it through this hole on the box on this side, and we are going to wire it into 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be red, black, white, and then our ground is going to go here on the ground. The other ground is going to be for our power cord, and then our line and neutral. Okay. So now these are all hooked up in the correct spot and in the correct order. This cable should be sandwiched underneath this bracket right here, so we'll go ahead and do that. But before I do this, major disclaimer: every electrician in the world is going to not agree with what I'm doing right here. Now keep in mind, this is a temporary install, so I probably won't be in this space for more than 6 months. So this is my disclaimer. I'm only running this extension cord about 6 feet. That's it. So it's very short, and on top of that, it's going into the line that's going into the box. Now realistically, since I'm this close to the breaker, if this was my house, I would run this directly into the circuit breaker box and give it its own breaker. But I'm only doing this to show you guys that you can do this as a temporary install. So I am not an electrician. You should not take my advice on this, but this is how I'm setting this up for myself, because I can just unplug it from the back of it and it won't be a big deal. But realistically, outdoor Romex with a bolt-on end plug that you could plug into that would probably be a much better solution. So on this side we've got 1, 2, 3, so we've got red, black, white, and green. That matches what I have on the inside. Green goes to the ground right here, and then my power cable is neutral, line, and ground. So this is the adapter you need for R410A. And so I've got a vacuum pump. I actually own this one. This is one from Harbor Freight. And then I have some AC gauges. So we're putting this on the cold line and just screwing in right here. And hopefully that should be good and tight and not leaking out. And then we're going to go ahead and put this onto the cold side right here. And again, make sure it's lined up in a good seal, and if for some reason it shows you have a leak, always check the connections from here to the pump. So what I'm going to do is have my cold side all the way open. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the vacuum pump for about 15 minutes. We're going to let it suck down there and get it below the line, and it'll just evacuate all the oxygen out of the line. And then we'll let it sit and see if it holds that vacuum. So now you can see how it's in the negative there. So we're going to go ahead and let that sit and make sure that it stays negative. If it stays negative, then we don't have any leaks. We're good. We can open up the valves. Alright, so I've let this thing sit for an hour, and I vacuumed it down for half an hour and then just let it sit, and it looks like it's holding fine. So I think we are good to go. From here we can open up these end caps. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and open it up. You can hear the Freon leaking into it, so we got to undo that all the way until it backs completely out. It hits a stopping point. And now our system is full of R410A. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to just put a little bit of nylon around these threads, although there's a leaf on there. Can't have leaves on there. just help that seal up a little bit better. We'll put our caps back on. Okay, now for the test. Oh, look at that. Turns on. So let's set this to 69. And let's see what we got here. And that's cold. The last thing is just wrapping this thing in tape. And you want to start at the lowest point and then wrap it going up. And the reason why you do this is it creates a seal. So you can see right here where the tape isn't exactly sticking really well because the bend. Think of it as a roof, where if water's coming down, it's going to shear over these little edges. If you were to wrap it from the top down, these edges would be flipped, and then this would just trap water. So it's always best to wrap from the bottom, the lowest point, going up, and that creates a little bit of a roof shingle effect coming down. Because usually these electrical lines, I wrap these in with the tubes, but this one 14 inches shorter than it should be, so it's going to have to be by itself. I am going to tie it down. Now the other thing too is the drain, so I got to put the drain line on. That's this stuff right here. I'm not going to put much on. I'm just going to go past the window and feed it down to this bush. That's about it. That's all I have left to do on this. I hope you guys like this video. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, subscribe to my channel for more weird random information like this, and we'll talk to you guys later. See ya.